In this video, I'm going to discuss emotions. What are emotions? What is emotional stability? How can we have a certain amount of control over emotions, or do emotions control you? Emotions are energy in motion in the human body. When energy flows through the human body, we call that an emotion. Our emotional landscape, we inherit it to a certain extent through our conditioning and what our parents and society tells us about reality. We have an emotional reaction to that. It's very important for us to come in contact with our subconscious agreements that were laid on us from our conditioning as children, particularly trauma, the traumatic things that happened to us when we were young. They will create emotional habits that will carry through life. Now, not all of us had emotional trauma as a child. However, it doesn't necessarily take trauma. It could be any number of things that happen to you, just misunderstandings as a child when we're very, very young, that will create an emotional reaction to things in life. For instance, if let's say you were afraid of the dark because your mom used to put you in the dark room, turn the lights off, and she wouldn't let you have a night light when you were really young, and she was like, well, just get used to it, kid. So you grow up with this fear of the dark. Now, that could become all kinds of things as we get older. Fear of the unknown, fear of dark energies, fear of darkness, fears with the nighttime. You see what I'm saying? What happens to us when you're young can become a lifelong habit, a lifelong emotional habit. Emotional habits are very important, and how we deal with our emotions becomes a habit. These kind of habits are reinforced by our environment. They're reinforced by the people that we hang around with. They're reinforced by our family. How we allow the energy to flow through our system, how we react to the emotional stimuli that comes to us, will create a certain kind of emotional content. We get used to this emotional stability or instability. As we get used to this kind of emotional onslaught in life, it becomes like reality to us. Like, oh, I'm used to being all worked up. I'm used to being angry all the time. I have a job where I have to fire people. It makes me angry. I have a job where, a high stress kind of job that makes me feel uptight. And then we get used to that. What we get used to emotionally becomes our comfort level. Not everybody is interested in peace. Some people honestly believe that they love the level of stress that they live under because it is an emotional habit. Emotions are fine when they come into our life and we just let them go. Emotions become toxic when we think about them. There's a difference between a pure emotion and the feeling that emotion elicits in our body. This is the emotional habit, the feeling that the emotion elicits. Some people are fine with a high level of stress. It doesn't make them angry. Others, a little bit of stress and a little bit of things being out of order, and they're suddenly angry. They're suddenly ready to react to everything that comes their way because they're a little bit out of sorts. So the ability to deal with our emotional landscape is much more important than the emotional landscape that we are inhabiting or embodying. Many people have a tremendous desire for a lot of emotion and it doesn't seem to bother them. Others, a little bit of emotion and they're suddenly, holy moly, I can't deal with this. When we start to think, when we put thought and emotion together, this is called a thought form. And thought forms tend to become reality very quickly. It's like if you have a thought and the thought just comes and goes. It's not a big deal. If you have an emotion, the emotion comes and then it goes away, and you don't have a lot of feeling around that emotion, it's not a problem. But when we have an emotion, that emotion elicits a feeling. Then the feeling stays because we start thinking about it. We start thinking, oh, why did they do this? How come this person upset me? Then you start thinking about it, and you start putting that thought and the emotion together. It creates a thought form that will become reality very quickly. So we need to keep if we hope to have emotional stability, we need to keep tabs on, keep track of the emotions that we allow to cross into our life. And then the feelings that come from that emotion. Understand there's a difference between an emotion and a feeling. The emotion, the raw emotion, is just the energy moving through the body. Then you start to think about it. That thought process is the feeling. You program yourself to feel a certain way around certain emotions. Again, some people, they feel anger and it doesn't feel like it's upsetting them at all because they've programmed their body to deal with that adrenaline. They've programmed their body to deal with that level of stress, and it just feels normal to them. While other people that have a very peaceful, calm interior, a little bit of anger might be truly upsetting. So it's the way that we identify emotions and allow them to elicit a feeling that emotions become either useful or toxic. And this has a lot to do with clarity. Are you clear about the emotion that you're feeling? If you're clear about the emotion that you're feeling, then you can have a certain amount of reason. You can reason your way into emotional, into some kind of emotional equilibrium. But if it's unreasonable and you're unclear about what the emotion is, this emotion comes rushing in. There's no clarity around it. You become unreasonable. You can't reason what this is all about. Why am I feeling this? What is this feeling? How come this is happening to me? And then you start thinking about it and you start regurgitating it and going around and around and around, creating thought form, negative thought form after negative thought form. Then those emotions become toxic. Our emotions can be our best friend when we have good emotional habits. The way to make good emotional habits is to understand, have a certain amount of clarity and reasonableness around the feelings that you get from your emotions. If you have a plan in mind, if you have some sort of intention, it's very important to plug a feeling into that emotion or into that thought form, into that intention, if you hope to have it come to be. If you have an intention, you set an intention, but you have no emotional feeling around it, it's not going to come into fruition. It's when we feel what that scenario is going to be like, we actually feel it, that it starts to put meat onto the bones. It's so important that we have really clear parameters around what is it that we're trying to feel. Emotional clarity creates good emotional habits. Good emotional habits create emotions that work for us rather than work against us. There's nothing wrong with emotions unless the emotions are working against you. So often we'll have emotions that aren't really our emotions because we haven't done the work to clear our conditioning as a child, our childhood conditioning, to where we're getting to our own feelings and our own thoughts. If all the thoughts and emotions that have come up to you are a reaction to things that are happening to you, they seem like they're happening to you because you keep having the same little emotional belt, the same little wheel you're going around and around, that's coming from your childhood. It's coming from some sort of hurt. So finding emotional clarity. Once we find emotional clarity and we understand the feelings that we're having, then we can have good emotional habits. Once we can set parameters and a boundary around our emotional habits, then we can start the real work of creating or limiting and creating boundaries to the kind of information that we let in. In the modern cyber world of so much information, it's very important that we do not allow all this negativity to just come pouring in, and then we have an emotional reaction to it. Before you know it, you're a mess. This is not what emotions are for. Emotions are designed to enrich your experience. However, if you let every little bit of information to come in and then you have an emotional reaction to it, then those emotions are not even yours, but you're going to be living them. They're going to bring things into your life, and things will start to come alive in your life that you may not even really want. This is how commercials work. This is how the propaganda that the big corporations want to have you believe, this is how it works. You start to think, oh, I need that, because you see this cute little, this beautifully, commercial about this great product, and then you get it in your mind. It elicits this feeling, you start to have the feeling, and before you know it, oh, you're lockstep to the store wanting to get it. It's so important to have emotional clarity. Then limit the amount of information that comes in. And the way we can do this is to find some inner silence. Find a place where you can meditate in a way that you get to this place of equilibrium inside of you, where you're no longer allowing the five senses to tell you what's going on. This is what inner silence is. You're not paying attention to what can be seen or heard or felt. You are in this beautiful silence, and from there you can start to see with some clarity your life. When you can see through silence this clear picture of who you are and who you are not, then the emotions that work for you, it starts to make sense. It won't make any sense at all if you are nothing but a walking commercial, if you are nothing but the news and all the bad news, and you're nothing but the gossip from your friends. Find the inner peace within you, the peace within you, the true energy within you, and from that silence, you can start to make good decisions around what emotions you want to elicit. There are emotions that are not human. These are the real emotions, the pure emotions that we want to cultivate. They can be found in nature. When you go into a grove of beautiful trees, you'll get a feeling. Now that feeling is not necessarily yours. That feeling is coming from the trees. It's coming from the beauty around you. You'll bring that into you, and then you'll start to think about it, and then from there it can become a piece of you. You go swimming in the ocean, and you just, oh gosh, I feel so good. That feeling, that pure emotion, is coming from the ocean itself. You can go to the desert at night, and it's dark and it's kind of spooky. That feeling, that pure emotion, is coming from the desert. Cultivate these energetic feelings from the earth to find some new kind of emotional fortitude, to find natural feelings, pure emotions that can bolster your resolve to find emotional clarity. If the only emotions that you allow yourself to bring in are other humans and the media's idea of what reality is, then you're going to have trouble finding the kind of emotional landscape that brings joy and beauty into your life, because these kinds of emotions, they come from the earth itself. Find a way to get out into nature. Find some silence once you're in nature. Feel that emotions, that energetic feeling from the earth itself, And from there, start to build a reservoir, build a new resume of feelings and pure emotion, so that the joy in your life and the joy of who you really are can come to fruition.